download, and we highly recommend using the multi-platform installer. It'll work on Red Hat 5, Red Hat 6, Debian, Mac. It doesn't matter, but it automatically downloads the correct version and installs it correctly. So if you'd like to follow along, that would be acceptable. I'm just filling in some quick information that I agree to the license, and then it comes up with a link, and you download that, and Chrome will download it. And then going back to the install instructions, um, first thing I do is I go into the downloads folder where Chrome downloaded it and untar the installer. And then I actually run it. And this usually takes a second or two. It detects what platform you're running, downloads the correct version, and then installs it. And congratulations, you have installed Bosco. It's that simple. So as we move on down the Bosco Quick Start, first thing you have to do is you have to set up your environment so that all the Condor and Bosco bits will be correctly installed into your environment. The next step is to actually start Bosco. Bosco has a few services that are run continuously in order to check job status and to submit jobs automatically and anything else that's normally done in a distributed high throughput system. So I'll go ahead and just start it real quick. And as simple as that, Bosco was started. Then I will, sorry, I was reading through your comments. Add a cluster to Bosco. So I have a PBS cluster here at Nebraska that I'm going to use. It is called Tusker. It's a 7,000 core PBS cluster production. So I'm not using any test clusters here. So what I do is I issue this command, and here I'll expand my window a little bit so the full thing will fit on one line. Bosco cluster add. I tell it my username and the host. And this is exactly like if you were typing in SSH. This is the same thing you would type in. And then you tell what type of cluster it is. And for example, Tusker is a PBS cluster. So I just tell it it's a PBS cluster. Bosco asks me a few minimal questions. For example, what password do I want to store the Bosco SSH key with for a little bit of security? And then finally, what is my password into Tusker? And then it detects the PBS configuration. It downloads the correct version. Now, I have to note that I'm running this on my Mac natively. I'm running Bosco natively on my Mac. And Tusker is a Red Hat 6 cluster, so it has to download the Red Hat 6 Bosco, unpack it, and send it to Tusker. And so it automatically detects the version, remote cluster version, in order to send it the correct binary. So if it was Red Hat 5, it would download Red Hat 5. If it was a Debian cluster, it would download Debian, and then it would send the correct binaries to the remote cluster. And as this is creating Bosco for the worker nodes, I'll check the comments, make sure everything's good. Okay, excellent. Now it's sending the stuff. Okay, installation complete. The Tusker has been added. Tusker has been added to Bosco and is available to run jobs. And then it gives you a little bit of a snippet of a submit file. These are the lines that are required to be in the submit file in order to submit to Tusker. And then in the quick start guide, the first step, and this is all adding cluster, and there's special situations if the only way to get into your cluster is SSH keys, then we have a little bit of instructions how to do that. But basically, to verify that it was added correctly, and it told me it was added correctly, but just to see, I do a Bosco cluster list, and it tells me I have one installed cluster, Weitzel at Tusker, and it's a PBS cluster. So first thing I normally do is immediately I run a test job. And test jobs, it It's a trace route similar capability where it tests every step of the way. And so my cluster is dweitzel at tusker.unl.edu. And first thing you'll do is test SSH. That worked. Testing submission. That worked. Waiting for job manager to accept the job. That worked. Submission to the remote PBS cluster. That worked. And now it has to actually wait for the job to exit, which I actually don't know how busy our production Tusker cluster is. And so it could take 60 seconds to start the PBS job and then come back, or it could take 5 days. Both are completely acceptable answers to how long is my job going to take to run to completion, especially on a busy PBS cluster. So I'm not exactly sure how long this will take. The test will only wait for 60 seconds, and then it'll say the job is still okay. It's just, it's been more than 60 seconds. And while we're waiting here, I'm going to look at the comments. We're good. Now I'm going pretty fast. I apologize. Let me know if you have any questions, either in the comments or if you want to speak up. Either is fine. Okay, so the job did not end in 60 seconds. This is not always a bad thing. Maybe Condor is waiting longer to pull the job completion. Who knows what's going on? But the job is still idle. And so if I do a Condor queue, now the job is gone, which means the job has completed, which is excellent. So test job is gone. It's exited correctly. We're good to go. So if we go back to the test or quick start guide, the next step is to write a very simple starter script, just to kind of get a feel for Bosco and feel for what it feels like to submit a real job, not just a test job. So first thing I do is I create a new simple bash script called my job. And I'll go ahead and just copy and paste the content so I don't have to type it all. So myjob.sh, and I already had it ready. So what all it will do is it will prepare. It has different steps: prepare for execution, run actual applications, and then final steps. Right now, I'm running simple applications, so I don't need to prepare anything. I'm just checking the host name, the date, the ID, and who am I. And if you know Linux or Mac commands, these are all very common commands. So then I'll make it an executable with chmod. And I'll actually run it on my Mac just to see what comes up. So it's telling me it's running on Derek Weitzel's MacBook Pro. It's Thursday, March 21st, my ID, and then all my different user accounts. So if I edit a file called example.condor, I will do, I'll just go ahead and copy and paste this. Now, just looking through it, the grid resource doesn't look quite right. I am not Marco, and I'm not submitting to UC3-PBS at University of Chicago. So what I'll do is I'll take that out, and I will, in the previous step, when I added the cluster, it told me, and I can scroll up and see where it actually told me. It told me the line should look like grid resource equals batch PBS dweitzel at tusker.unl. So I'll just copy that at tusker.unl.edu. And everything else looks good. Executable is my job. The output will go to output, error, go to a file named error. I'm not too creative on these file names. And then the log of the job will go to my job.log. Okay, so now I will submit the job using Condor submit. Then if I look at Condor queue, it says it's idle. Okay. And maybe more importantly, if I look at the myjob.log, what I'll see is, and I ran a previous example, so it's a little bit messy, but the it submitted the job at 2:41 at my host, and then almost 10 seconds later, it submitted it to the PBS cluster at tusker.unl.edu. Now again, I'm not sure how busy Tusker is today, and so it may take more than 10. It may take more than 60 seconds to run. I don't know. But the point of this is that it is running. That if I do a Condor Q, it'll tell me it's idle, and you can always check the status of the job with the log. And then we have another section about what do you do next. And so you can go through a tutorial on HT Condor, which you'll be able to use in Bosco. You can look at the Condor manual to look at how to submit maybe more complex jobs to Bosco. Maybe you have hundreds of megabytes of input files that you need to transfer over. It'll talk about how to do that. Or hundreds of megabytes of data to transfer back, and it'll talk about that. That's one thing that Bosco is very good at, is transferring data back to where you submitted it. And so if you're submitting it from your laptop like I am, I don't have to go and SCP anything off a remote cluster. It'll automatically come back to my workstation. So I can open it up in Excel from my workstation. I don't have to SCP anything back. I don't have to deal with CyberDuck or whatever. And then I look back at my log. There's this new entry that says the job terminated, return value 0. And if I remember correctly, I sent the output of that command of that file to a file named output. So I'll cat it real quick. It tells me that it ran on a node C2121 at Tusker at 2:41, which was a few minutes ago. And then it'll tell me my username and the groups I'm in. And so this talk is mostly meant for questions and just a quick, brief overview of how to install Bosco. I will take any questions now. We have successfully